running through the grave, from the shadows to the screen. They decode what the silence means. Click subscribe, let the veil be torn. This is the news we've been waiting for. Turning away, global watchmen leading the way. Every story, every thread, for the living and the misled. Raise your voice, let the signal soar. This is the news we've been waiting for.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Global Watchman News. My name is Lori Swan. Hope you guys are all doing well. If you are in the live chat, we do ask to keep it family friendly. There will be moderators in there to make sure that we stay within the terms of service put forth to us by the platform we're utilizing tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Take a minute, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, so you know when we go live. I was dumb and I shut the light off, but I don't know why I shut the light off because I can't read my notes. So, all right. So, sorry about the, we're talking about technology tonight. And of course, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but you know what? That's what happens. But tonight, we're going to welcome back our good friend, Dr. JOYE PUGH. As always, she's fascinating and informative on discussions that we have here. And they've never disappointed. She's the author of the book called Beast Mark, End of Days. She's also the author of Antichrist, the clone image of Jesus Christ, and you can find her other informative packed books available over on our website at drjoypugh.com. She's always captivates our audience here, and she's one of our viewer favorites. So please welcome back Dr. JOYE PUGH. Hey, Joy.
Hi, Lori. It's kind of funny how all this happens. I mean, my laptop that I've used for many shows it had a problem with the battery, and they had a problem trying to repair the laptop and ended up destroying my laptop. And so I'm using a laptop that is a loaner to be able to do my shows until after the first of the year. I mean, really just kind of crazy setup that Microsoft would have made a computer that you couldn't change a battery on. I mean, it just really was very strange. So I was trying to get in on this new computer, and I'm thinking, this is supposed to be the state of the art that they've given me to be able to do the shows. And I'm like, what is going on? So apparently somebody didn't want us to talk about the interesting phenomena that is known as artificial intelligence.
That could be it. You know what? When I was putting together tonight's show, I had it. I'm not one. I don't like horror films. I don't like horror movies. Never have, which is crazy because I'm kind of a adrenaline junkie when it comes to like the medical side of it, being a paramedic. But I don't like that adrenaline, that fear adrenaline, for scary movies. But as I was doing research tonight, and you probably already know about this stuff, but the things that nightmares are made of are exactly what's happening right now when it comes to when it comes to transhumanism.
Yes.
There are laws. Okay, so let's just start here. Okay, so there's a war for our breath, basically. Not a kind of war that you see in the headlines, not a kind of war that's fought with missiles or tanks, but a deeper war, one that reaches into the temple of God itself. Since the sixth day of creation, when God created humans, Satan has plotted to separate our souls from our Father. Lines were crossed, false promises have been made, but nothing derailed the mission of Satan, which is to destroy humanity. With the dawn of the fourth industrial revolution, which is the cyber physical systems, the corruption of our temples have become a very real threat. Now, DARPA's N2, N3 programs, which are synthetic telepathy, they are literally turning our bodies into network nodes. Our bodies are wireless body area networks, which are W bands, with a frequency standard of 802.15.6. With the implementation of the 5G, 6G networks, along with the AI and the nanotechnology that is saturated in that mRNA shot that people were taking in 2021, connecting those infected to the mainstream has become a reality. There are actual FCC rulings.
Yes.
IEEs, W-band standards, implant communication bands, DARPA projects like CT2WS and SALIS, Army systems like Hades and Osiris, and finally the 5G, 6G Ethernet, all verified from official sources with peer-reviewed engineering papers and government documents. All sources say that the human body is now classified as a transmitter. The biofield is being mapped as a data channel, and soldier civilian breath and vitals are being routed through IoT military clouds. They are building massive data centers that will integrate AI and our biofields to do what? That's not known at this point by us. But in recent interviews, Peter Thiel expressed skepticism about humanity's future, viewing human nature as a potentially evil or at least dangerous, and suggested that unchecked technological advancements, particularly AI, could lead to a dystopian character or even the extinction of humanity. Joy, that what that's what horror films are made of, right there.
Well, my latest book, Be Smart, when it came out last year, I think a lot of people were not really expecting for me to really open the door to understanding what's really happening. And everything you've read is total confirmation of everything that I've written in my latest book, Be Smart. It is clear that in doing research for all these years and written many books, the one thing that I felt like was that we were living in a time for an antichrist to be able to come to power and control us and be able to have power over us, to be able to take away our money and put it in cyberspace and not be able to buy, sell, or trade without this particular mark. That would be something that you couldn't get away from. And, all the times that when I started looking at all of this, I mean, I was like right out of college. And the thing that kept coming up and all the things that I felt like the Lord was giving me was about light, sound, and frequency. And it was really kind of weird because some of my first papers that I did in college were about that. And so over the course of trying to figure it out and trying to see where God was leading me with this, I began to really think, how was it that if you had, let's say you put a chip in somebody, you can take the chip out of them. It's something that we can track animals with. And when I first started talking about this in some of my first books, I mean, we were already putting them in dogs and cats and being able to find out exactly where they were. And then it went into horses and cows. And then all of a sudden, all of our cars had to have different chips and things of that nature. And then you had tracking devices. And we went from, 3G to 4G networks into 5G networks. And then it was like everything that we wanted to touch, we wanted to have control over and know what was happening in real time and that kind of things. And then when our cell phones became so powerful that anywhere you are in the world, that if I dial up your number, I can talk to you. I don't care where you're at, as long as there's a satellite that can connect that phone to you and I call a number, I get you. And so looking at what was going to bring about and the fact that we already have all of our so-called necessitated things.
Yeah.
And there's where the problem was. Well, how do we connect all of humanity together? And that is when I began to feel like God was leading me to take my in the medical. The end, you've got to understand the very beginning. If you didn't understand Genesis, then you were never going to understand Revelation.
Right.
And that is one of the things that God taught me, is that you got to get down to the basics and understand exactly what's going on to be able to see the broader picture. And sure enough, when I started looking back at the science of what we are and looking at where we are with understanding DNA, then there was this thing that was just over and over just coming out at me, that we are literally light, sound, and frequency, like I actually thought about back in 1978, 79, when I was just getting into college and doing these first papers and things.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I began to work on this Be Smart project, it became very obvious to me that when you look at the neuroscience and the research that's being done in that all our human brains actually may have an interconnection through the extremely low frequency electromagnetic waves that are all around us, so we cannot see. Those are the things that are used, for us to connect to each other through our cellular phones. And so when you look at those patterns and the hidden linkage between all of this and how we, as a race of humans, most are not aware of how serious it is just to have a phone on you that you can be found anywhere. And people talk about tracking, but if the phone could be taken out or away
Right.
from you, or if you could have a grain of rice that was under the skin, we looked at all kind of things and how it might be trackable, traceable and trackable kind of things. But it could be removed. The phone pulled the rice thing out of you. But if your brain, through your DNA, is absolutely, like I've said, in the pineal gland here, that's a transmitter and receiver, just like a radio, then all of our brains, from what I'm seeing now, and I mean, these are things that are now just being proven that I really had theoretical understanding about a long time ago when I started talking about this. But the human brain of all individuals may have that extreme low frequency wave between us all. Well, and so, I think back when I was in my early research, when I was doing counseling, and we were talking about ESP, if you remember, extrasensory perception.
Right.
And you would have this thing where if you put somebody on the other side of you, and all of a sudden you might think of something, and all of a sudden that person could identify what you were thinking.
I was just going to say
So
that
there was things like remote viewing and things of that kind of nature, transcendental meditation, going out of the body, and doing weird kind of things that were just being done when I was in my earlier, years of college. And so now that I've done this research, and I can literally say that the neuroscience research, it's not like theoretical anymore. It's not like fake information. It's definitely not conspiracy. And that's what I was called when I first started trying to explain all of this. We are all sound, light, and frequency, and we can't get away from it because our DNA is literally programming our bodies to do whatever it needs to do to stay alive. It's like a program of a computer keeping a software running and whatever needs to be done. And the same thing is happening in our bodies. So if you look at it, the brain is producing these tiny sparks of this electrical energy. And then these sparks create fields of electromagnetic waves that travel not only beyond our body, which, I've got papers that are coming in now saying that we have a glow and it was talked about a long time ago. We had like an astral light around us. There are people who could actually see like a blue light that goes all around you. And I tell you, I get out in the swimming pool and I like to look at how it does it, because it'll be blue on one side and yellow on one side if you're looking at your hand in water. You literally are giving off some type of energy. And interesting enough, the moment you die, that light goes away.
Right.
So looking at this and seeing how the brain is producing these sparks of electrical energy, you find that these fields of electromagnetic waves can, again, they're trapped. They're here with us. I mean, that's when if we have a heart attack, we put paddles on somebody, we're electrically bringing them back, because our heart, everything is done like an electromagnetic or electrical field that's around us.
Exactly.
So, if it's here on our body, and if it moves out from our body, then it has a way to travel. Okay. And understand transcendental meditation, leaving the body through astral projection. And I know I'm getting in some new age stuff and people get some anxious about this, but it truthfully can be done. It's no different than the near-death experience. When somebody steps out of the body, you're leaving the physical body, you're pulling that outside. But the problem is that we never had seen the capability until we got to the points that we are in science to show us about the DNA. So if I take a piece of DNA off of me and I put it in a petri dish and I ship it to, let's say, California, and then if you traumatize me something with my DNA, do you know that my DNA in that petri dish will react? And it's not even connected to me. It's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 miles away, wherever you have it at. It is going to react as if it was still a part of your body. So if you think about how these waves are all around us, potentially being able to move away from us, these waves have the characteristics of Earth's resonance frequency. And of course, Earth is vibrating at that stays consistent, so that we homeostatically stay like in a harmonic kind of blend.
But the problem with
so that means that.
But the problem with that, though, is that the Schumann resonance has been so quirky lately. And I think people feel that.
high and just yes,
Just,
and the people that are yeah, and the thing about it is we have we have graphs that show us that it's just it should go like a flow, but it's just all staying high across those graphs. It's amazing. And yes, I do believe that people are feeling that. And I think that some of the mental health problems that we're seeing and some of the things that people are going through are because their vibrational frequencies are being affected by it. One thing I did learn is that we are like tuning forks. And so anything that you allow into your mind through looking at it, hearing it, reading it, or whatever, being around people that are not good for you or whatever, that vibrational frequency is having a play on you. So if somebody has the capability to take and change the frequency of which we live in through human resonance, which is something that's out there, then we are reacting to it biologically when we do not even realize it. And so you've heard me talk many times on this show about the fact that the secret societies always said the deal would be that we would come to a time of a new world order. And you think about it, was always the pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the top. And if you go back and you study these secret societies, which I've done for years because my first books are about that, one of the greatest books I wrote about secret societies is Eden, the Knowledge of Good and Evil, 666, volumes 1 and 2. And what it tells you is that they were already understanding that we as humans could potentially be controlled just like a queen bee controls all the worker bees in her nest or in when they're building whatever. And that is a concern because if the queen bee sends out that information and you think about her wings are always making a vibration, and that vibration, that frequency is literally talking to her worker bees. If she dies and that frequency stops, the hive is destroyed. It falls literally apart. So when I started looking at that, and I could see that we were moving toward this new world order, and that something at the top would be controlling everything. In other words, somebody would have the capability of being able to control humanity without firing a shot. I mean, that's always been the thing, even going back into the 1960s when Jose Delgado was working with the CIA in our own country to how do we go after the Russians without having to fire a shot? How can we do that? And you think about the Havana syndrome that we hear about, in these other embassies, that they don't feel good, their minds feel crazy, they feel dizzy, they have situations where blood pressure goes up and down and they have panic attacks and they don't know why they're panicking. Well, when you can change the electromagnetic frequency around something and particle beam it toward you, in other words, send that beam at you, like send a beam to let's say a cell phone, when we can target an area with that kind of thing, then you can potentially make everybody in the room sick. And that's what we're seeing, because the deal again is, how do we take over humanity, corral humanity together, and connect humanity together to really go back to the Tower of Babel? And you think about what was the greatest thing that God did not like. He did not like the Tower of Babel because they were all of one mind, one accord, and they were trying to build to God. They were trying to become like little gods who thought they could do that by combining their minds and their thought processes together. And so what did he do? God literally destroyed the Tower of Babel by doing one thing: changing their ability to communicate. So in other words, where a long time ago, if a Russian spoke Russian and we spoke, English, we could not make any kind of headway unless we did signs or pictures or whatever, which take a long, long time to even communicate and translate whatever. Right. God immediately destroyed the Tower of Babel by sound. So we see how frequency plays a part in all of this. And so when we go back and we look at the beehive and see how that was all established, then we can understand our human brains. This pineal gland has this antenna, it has this quartz-like stuff in it that literally is like a transmitter and receiver. So if we're all walking around as little antennas who are tuning forks, that if we can affect each other, and sometimes you feel good around people, sometimes you feel bad around people. We can go back and look at one of the greatest scientific research studies that was done by a Japanese scientist, where he took water, just plain water, He put the same water in two different glasses. And he removed this glass and he talked to this glass and he talked to it and he said all
Mhm.
good, wonderful, loving things. And he
Right.
put it in a freezer and froze it. Then he got the other glass and he spoke all these terrible,
Terrible
terrible
things.
words. And he put it in a freezer and he froze it. And when he took it out, if it was frozen and looked at it under the microscope, the words that he had talked very well to was all beautiful. They were like
Beautiful.
snowflakes. Everything was mathematically perfect. But when he
Mhm.
took the water out that was talked to in such curse words and whatever, it was all jagged. All the crystals were all messed up. So
Mhm.
we are, a lot of people say 90% water, but something around that level of water. So if whatever we hear, whatever we see, whatever's been beamed at us, it's literally changing us biologically and it's affecting the frequency of our DNA. So let's just look at just what I started with. If neuroscience research is now showing that all human brains are interconnected by extremely low frequency electromagnetic activity, then
Mhm.
we may function as a global neural network. We can
Right.
all be connected, just like the worker bees under the queen bee. And what does that tell you? New
Well,
World Order,
when I was
got the
researching
top, is controlling everyone that way.
exactly when I was researching it, and I came across the words that they are literally turning our bodies into a network of nodes. I was like, I got chills because I'm thinking to myself, that's they're using us as batteries essentially, but for what? For what really? Um, I mean, you could go down the avenue of the Gnostics, and you could say that it's the the archons that are feeding off our energy, or it's this or that, but they're doing it for a purpose, and I don't trust, and I know a lot of people don't trust Peter Thiel. That man's evil. Okay, he's evil incarnate. He is. Um, he does not have the best interest of the advancement of humanity at all. Um, but when you look at okay, so this is one thing about okay, so in 2009, the United States government through the FCC quietly declared a new service called the Medical Body Area Network. Hidden behind jargon, what they did was astonishing. They turned the human body into a licensed transmitter of wireless data. Your pulse, your breath, your immune signals were no longer sacred rhythms of life. They were spectrum. They were carved up, allocated, and sold to corporations under the guise of healthcare. From that moment, the Internet of Things, guys, remember when we talked about the Internet of
That's
Things
right.
when 5G came out? From that moment, the Internet of Things was no longer just phones and refrigerators. It became the Internet of bodies. Every beat of your heart, every exhale of your breath, every flicker of your immune system was prepared to be harvested, routed, and stored in a cloud. And while the paperwork said patient monitoring and safety, the reality was a new battlefield, the body itself.
That's right. Yes, I mean that's one thing I noted that in my latest book is that DNA is the new oil. We've always lived in a world where economically we were after who had the most opportunity to have gas and have oil to make those kinds of things, and that those countries that actually had accessibility to that were the countries that kind of ruled the world in a way. But the oil that used to be I guess the main want of the world has now turned to DNA, and that's quite amazing. I'm like you that we started off doing fitness trackers and smartphones and health apps and all kinds of stuff that kept up with our pulse rates and gadgetries and whatever, but that is now a part of a digital network, and it's capable of tracking not just your illness but all human behavior itself, because you are vibrating at a frequency. And once you understand vibration in the brain itself, let's just say that we can look at the vibratory responses of the brain and how it manifests itself if you're smoking marijuana, and it may light up a certain area of the brain.
Right.
But what happens is that we can now take technology and frequency and light up that same area of your brain as if you had smoked marijuana, or as if you had taken cocaine, or if you had had a sexual experience. We have the capability, scientifically wise, to do it in frequencies without even having accessibility to drugs or alcohol or whatever. And that is a real concern, because what are people locked into? Nothing but technology. And you cannot. I mean, I think about years ago when I first remember they were backward masking words into
Yeah.
albums, and one of them was that Paul was dead. It was a Beatle album, and I
Yeah.
remember us taking and
Yeah.
spinning it backwards around on the needle to have it tell us
The
Paul is
Paul is
dead,
dead.
Paul is dead, Paul is dead. So, you those were the first things, and then they came out with the ability. I can remember when I was in my undergraduate work, and they were trying to give you ways to stop smoking or having problems, mental health wise. And they would
yeah,
put you,
the tapes they gave you, right?
yes, they would give you a little tape, and it
Yeah.
would sound like music, or it would sound like white noise. But in that white noise, it would be saying, repetitiously, you're not going to smoke, you're going to give up smoking, and things of that nature. And they were pretty effective. And then we went to seeing people do it marketing wise. And you go into a store and they're playing all this music, but within the music, they're going like let's say you're going into a belt store, and it's telling you that you need to buy today, you need to do so and so. So I have watched it go from just knowing
Movies, they did the same thing.
whatever you see. Right. I mean, that was one of the first things is like, why did Coca-Cola choose red?
Right.
And when the movie theaters and they would put up that, signs, everybody would head to the refreshment stuff. So I was already seeing, how do we control people by light, sound, and frequency?
Let me ask
And
you
it's
a
an
question,
easy thing to
Joy.
do, especially when you understand we're all connected.
Let me ask you a question. So a number of
Sure.
years back, there was the report of that they did locate what is known as the God gene. And when they isolated this gene, which gave us our faith, it gave us our belief, it gave us our our longing to return to our Creator per se, um, they were said to have the ability to turn that off and on. That right
The
there.
thing that worries me most,
Go ahead.
well, when you start, this is the only thing I can say. I know that Scripture tells us that we have a choice for the mark of the beast, and that was one of the things that I felt like that nobody was going to be able to hold you down and put a chip in you. I mean, people were panicking all the time
Right.
that somebody was going to hold them down and put a chip in them.
Right.
But the thing about it, you have a choice. At the end of days, it's a choice whether or not you're connected to the main thing, the what I call the beehive mind, or the universal collective consciousness is what I call it in my book.
Right.
Your choice as to whether or not you're going to accept being made into transhumanism type of a half human, half robot. And I think that explains very clearly what Daniel was telling us about the final generation, that they would be like the 10 toes, iron and clay mixed together. And clearly that's what we're talking about. We also know in Scripture that it tells us that the end of days in the book of Revelation, if the time is not cut short, then no flesh will survive this. So when you look at the capability of using technology connected to us, and we already see that. I mean, Elon Musk is done this Neuralink where he puts it, into the brain, and these people are able to do all kinds of magnificent things by a thought process. And again, that goes back to like an ESP that we were looking at years ago, then trying to figure out how is it that sometimes people can have messages sent between them. I can remember my mother would pick up the phone to call me, and I pick up the phone to call her. We'd both be on the phone, and we both dialed at exactly the same time. In other words, there was this congruency between us that you see that in a lot of situations where you go, well, it's kind of deja vu, and how did that happen at the same time? But there is like this interconnection. And when you study bees or even the ant
Twi-
population, the
Twins.
queen
Twins
ant.
have twins have that
Yeah,
connection.
twins have that.
Yeah.
And I will share this because I think if people don't understand about twins, it's very there is a difference. I mean, they don't have the same fingerprint, but they do have an interconnection of knowing things. And one of the things was that I had a good friend that my husband has passed away. He had a good friend, and he was a twin. And so Lloyd and Floyd, grew up together, married, whatever. But when he would come to pick Floyd, or Lloyd would pick Floyd up for, let's say, a game of golf, they'd have on the same outfits, and they were like
Yeah.
50 and 60 years old.
Yeah.
And then the most interesting thing was one night, Lloyd was actually in the bed with his wife, Jackie. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, he sits straight up and he says, "Jackie, get ready." And she says, "For what? What's going on?" He said, "Floyd, he needs me right now. We got to go right now. Get up, get up, get up." And she says, "Well, how do you know where he's at? What are you talking about?" He says, "Just get up."
Yeah.
And when she did and went and got in the car, he drove his car out into the country on a country road. And actually, Floyd had lost control of his car at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He was in a ravine with a car with water up to his neck.
Oh my
I'm
God.
telling you. And Lloyd jumps in and saves his brother. How did
My
he
mother.
know that his brother was on that road at that moment? He went
Right.
directly to him and saved his life. It's because we have a connection.
Yeah.
And
My
powers
mother
that
was a
be know
twin.
it.
My mother was a twin, and her twin brother, um, he had cancer, and I had gotten the call about, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I went upstairs to my mom's room, and she was awake, and she said, "He's gone." She told me he's gone, and I said, "What?" And
Yes,
she said, I can feel him. He's gone."
feel it. See,
Yeah.
that's the thing about it. When they die like that, and usually you have a dominant twin and you have a recessive twin. One will
Yeah.
follow the other. And whenever they're separated, and I have a friend that lost um, his brother when he was like 15 or 16 years old. He can't function because the brother was the dominant twin. And he
Right.
was not. He was the recessive twin. So he has had so much difficulty in his life just living because the dominant twin he depended on. It
Yeah.
is amazing. And when you go back and you study, Mingle and all that went on with Hitler, and how he was into understanding twins, and how all of his people went underground and were ended up down in South America, Twin City.
Right.
What were they doing? They were literally trying to understand those connections and
Connection.
how does humanity work. And once you get that total grasp that we are kind of like, and I don't mean to take this down away from being that we are in the image of God, but we are like the animal population, especially the bees, that
Hmm.
they have this frequency that connects them. And if you think about it, even Lori, when you get migratory paths of all your, let's say your birds, and one time not too long ago I wrote about it. I think it was in my books Beguiled Eden Armageddon, volumes 1, 2, and 3. We had like ducks flying, and they were off kilter, and they were crashing into these huge parking lots thinking that they were bodies of water because something had shifted. And I think it's because due north had shifted, our Earth had shifted and
Right.
tilted a little bit more. It threw the migratory paths off because migratory paths are also electromagnetic energy. They're
Right.
frequency that allows these things to fly and to migrate and do whatever. So when you look at it, all of this has connections to the really by it. And when you talk about, like, for example, this past year has been the coronal, ejections off of the sun. And when we get these coronal ejections like we've been having off of the sun, they come into our atmosphere and they produce these auroras. I mean, the other night we had auroras down in South Georgia that we were taking pictures of. They
Yeah,
were
that was crazy.
turning,
I don't
yeah,
think
they were
I don't think I've ever seen it go down.
And
So,
earlier, back in a couple, I guess, months and months ago, it was all the way down into Florida, places that we have never had historical record of these aurora borealis being in these particular areas. And it's because these coronal mass ejections coming off the sun are coming directly at us. And if we go back and you look in our history, there is a situation where it hit us so bad that the telegraph system that was just wiped out.
Carrington effect. The
The
Carrington
Carrington
effect.
effect. So when
Yeah, it
we
was the
get this
Carrington effect.
electromagnetic, I mean, what the coronal mass ejections are electromagnetic frequencies that are being thrown at us, and when it hits our Earth's atmosphere, it's all we are absorbing it. That's the concern is that if you are, let's just say, out in the space station, if you're traveling by airplane, whatever, even our towers, many times things will black out when we get these coronal mass ejections because the ELF waves are so hard and so frequent, and the radiation involved in it can literally burn something up. So if let's just say that we did have a Carrington effect again, and they're very worried about that because of the
They
sun's
are. Yeah.
terrible activities. If that happens, it fries everything. Okay, we think about, well, what happens? We're worried about the Chinese and the Russians
Okay.
doing something and emitting these what they call electromagnetic pulses that would destroy the electricity because it would put everything out. When the sun itself can do it, we don't have to have the Chinese and the Russians to do that. Our sun can literally do that. And so when you look at the bigger picture of how all this is tying itself together, and you look at the protons, electrons, and all that's involved in quantum physics, then you get to seeing that where people will say this is just haphazard, like two rocks came together and formed all this. Literally, Lori, what we're seeing happening, and this is proof in the pudding, that this all just didn't happen chaotically by chance. There is something in control of everything that we are involved in. And everything that we think, do, or say is also electromagnetic waves. So if you think like God, if you don't understand that God created all of this, and I've tried to use this as an example, he's like the great conductor. And if you're a great conductor and you've got an orchestra of 100 people out there and the string on the 10th violin breaks, a good conductor is going to know that it broke because it's a different frequency. He will immediately note. And if you play guitar or if you play piano or if you're a musician like I am, if something's out of tune, you know it.
Right.
Well, if we know it as musicians or as the conductor of an orchestra, imagine how God and Satan know it. So that when you are literally not staying tuned to God, Satan knows it. And if you are not tuned to God, God knows it.
Do you think that, because I know that when we are born again and we, accept Jesus Christ and we have the Holy Spirit come into us, I know that it changes us. That's being born again. That's what it means. It means you're changed. And does it change does it heal us in a way of our frequency? Do the believers have a different frequency than, say, an atheist?
Well, I was reading some information the other day on some of that. And what they're finding is that people, when we pray, our brains actually do something very different. And it's interesting that the majority of people who are Christians tend to heal faster. And that there are some belief that the people who do practice religion every week and are a part of something, that they literally don't get sick as much. So there is some proof that's scientific out there that can be looked at from brains and people being sick and what their processes are as far as belief and that kind of thing. But I really believe that when it says in scripture, these signs shall follow them that believe, they shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. It doesn't say they won't recover. It says they shall recover. But the fact that we're laying hands, and if you ever take and you really put your hand, close your hand, just leave it there, you will feel the warmth. of your hand. But if there are some people who believe that if you just rub your hand back and forth, let's say over an area that may have sickness, that you will feel like a change in that area of where you've got your hand over them.
Wow.
And I had started doing some research the other day because I was very interested in this about why it is that in scripture it tells you to anoint with oil. And I was looking at what the frequency was of, let's say, blessed olive oil, and why it would be that we would put olive oil, let's say, on the hands and put it on the person. Would it allow our frequency, which is maybe a tuning fork, because we are well, that when we lay hands on the sick, she'll recover. So I'm doing some. It's funny that we're talking about this,
Yeah.
but I've been doing some research to try to understand that the oil may be like a conductor
That's
of
interesting.
that energy flow that we exchange between each other and may help in the healing process.
Well, I know that we're supposed to wear certain clothes. We're supposed to wear cotton clothes because cotton, it's the frequency of the fabric. Sleeping in polyester or sleeping in artificial sheets. That's not good for you. Mixing polyester with cotton. That's another thing that you're wearing dead clothes. And when you wear a dead piece of cloth, it's going to suck the life out of you, literally. But if you wear something that's alive, like a cotton cloth or cotton clothes, you're putting that energy back into your body, or you're insulating it it's not going to be seeping out. That sounds horrible, but that's the only way I can explain it. This whole thing has me like completely mind boggled, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, somewhere in a lab, locked away, are these experiments that are happening that are probably so horrific. I mean, literally, I had a video up on the screen a couple minutes ago. I took it down. It's this one, and this is AI. Okay, I get it. This is AI, but basically, this can't be far from the truth about what's happening somewhere, someplace, probably an underground bunker somewhere. That they're doing these experiments to find out, literally, that this stuff is real. This stuff is true. This stuff is happening.
Yes. And the thing about it, Lori, they've been studying this a very, very long time. It's not something that just happened. It's been going on. Like I say, I was able to find paperwork from CIA that under the Freedom of Information Act, talking about these kinds of things that were being done to try to understand the mind, the remote control capability, the fact that our government used remote control and remote viewing to do a lot of things. And there was even a movie that came out about being able to use a goat and remote control him. I mean, these were things that were really being done in scientific labs everywhere. And one of the things that I think, one of the major things, was when they started doing these lobotomies on people, and the fact that they were going in and changing the personality of an individual by doing the lobotomy into their brain. And they were messing with what would be the pineal gland in the end, because of what the lobotomy was actually doing to the brain. So they were trying to find out, where is it that, let's say, our personality exists, or where is it that our spirit exists, and those kinds of things. Because if they can keep the body alive and keep and maintain something within it, they think they have found a way to to manipulate human, let's say, DNA and things of that nature, and also look at the telomeres that will be able to tell, can we make flesh live? And they were already keeping flesh alive in petri dishes a long time ago. I mean, these secret societies had already figured out that if you take flesh and you put it in a petri dish, you just feed it the correct proteins and whatever, you keep it alive forever. I mean, one of the greatest things that they kept alive that there's still pieces of is the first person who ever had a tumor. A cancerous tumor. There's still pieces of that out there, and all you do is you just keep feeding it. So they knew how to keep the flesh alive. The problem was, if you died, then the spirit returns to God. And that was a problem with them. Is how do you keep the person who they are as they are inside the body? And so when we start looking at transhumanism, there's this gray area right there
Right.
of how do you keep a person, they'll say,
How
well,
much of that person's humanity can you transform into a machine before it's no longer a human?
right. And that's the concern, is that people are going to jump on this bandwagon because we can already see what Elon Musk is being able to
Yeah.
do. Once he put those Neuralink things in these people, they became just like your Alexa in your house, or, anything that you're using like Gemini or whatever. When you ask a question, they immediately know an answer. So if you and I are vying for a job and I'm connected to that, I don't even have to ask an Alexa. It's just that I will know it. And then I will have the ability to move things with my mind, thinking it and making it move. Well, if we're vying for a job and you don't have that capability, guess who's going to get that job? I'm
Right.
going to get the job, because what they're going to tell us is, look,
It's
this
DEI all to a next level.
that's right. We're wanting to go into the golden age of humanity. You hear it being told all the time. We're headed to the golden age of humanity. It's the great reset of humanity. It's the fourth industrial revolution. And you think about the third industrial revolution was when we went into industrialization, and we got out of the farming and the caveman stuff, whatever, and we moved into the industrial area. Now we're moving into the AI area. And if you don't want to go with us, you're a problem. So if we all connect everybody up and everybody's gung ho about it, then we all will take a step in a much higher level of everything. And I'm not saying that AI is a bad thing, because it has helped a lot of people do a lot of things, but it also allows us to go into an area of evil that is far controlling, that you will have no ability to get out of it once you connect into it. And I think that's the thing, is when I realized that the mark of the beast was not going to be some kind of little chip. It was going to be your DNA frequency. And if they can connect up to it and you allow it to be done, and it makes you into this transhuman, where you are connecting yourself up to the sky, into the satellites, into this Elon Musk thing, then you are going back to the Tower of Babel. You are going back to where the mindsets are all the same, with one brain promoting the same agenda. And let's just say right now in our world, everybody does their own thing. They're like a bunch of crazy people running around, and nobody, if you have a business and everybody's on their phones and they're not doing, what is happening to your business? It kind of falls apart. But if you have a group of people who all are the same mindset and they all working toward a common goal, those businesses thrive. So how do you make it where we can take humanity and control it to the point that we set ourselves like little gods? And what was happening in the Tower of Babel? The exact same thing. But Satan was smart. He was like, how do I get the people back connected up to each other to go against God? The greatest way is to go into transhumanism, because once you cut into your DNA, it's CRISPR technology. We can take out genes and put in things and whatever. And like you were talking about, try to find the God gene. And they've found some of this stuff. And how do you make these limiters just continue to grow without dying? How do you get past the death gene? I mean, there's all kinds of articles. Life Extension down in Florida has numerous articles on how that's being done and how it's perfecting itself. I mean, there are certain creatures that live on this planet that have extremely long lifespans, and we've learned from that how to avoid or how to regenerate the body. Right. There are, like an earthworm, it just keeps remaking itself. How do we also continue to not have to die? The deal is, the biggest thing that humanity has to worry about is we all don't want to die. So what does the Satan do? He says, okay, I can make you like an earthworm. I can keep giving you parts and whatever, and I can keep rejuvenating your own body and maintaining it. But to do that, you've got to be connected up to all this kind of stuff, and we've got to go to this other technology. And so people, unfortunately, want to go with what's going to make them the best to be the best. And I mean, anybody would want to do that. It's like trying to go to school and learn to be great at what you do. It's a selling factor of, I can keep you from dying. I can keep you in your business. All you got to do is connect up. You won't lose your mind. We'll save that information. If anything happens to you, we'll just reprogram it back into you. You'll live forever. There's all these promises that clearly a long time ago were science fiction and some space fiction book, about living forever.
It must be terrifying to have no hope beyond the grave.
That's right.
I mean, literally, that's the problem with these people, is that they're searching for eternal life when
here and now.
Yeah, but if they would swallow their pride and accept Christ, they would have that eternal life, and they wouldn't have to give away part of their humanity to make it happen. Just to have no hope beyond the grave is it's sad for me.
And that's one of the reasons in my latest book I tried to explain to people that about death, because it's not discussed I guess a lot, even in our Christian circles, in our churches and things of that nature. Because a lot of people think that when you die that you're laying out there in the graveyard, and literally my research shows that there ain't nobody laying out in that graveyard. When your heart stops beating, you are electromagnetic. When it stops beating, and your soul, which is who you are, and your spirit body that looks identical to you, it comes out of you. That's why we see this light go away. We see this little energy that we can actually look at scientifically leave the body. There's a little bit of weight loss that occurs and all that. And if you've ever had a near-death experience, the body is laying there. You can literally see if you've been in a bad accident, man, that thing is really all smashed up, and here comes the ambulances, and you're like looking at all of this. And then you look at yourself, and you're still you, and you still know who you are. And then if you go into this tunnel and you get into a heavenly realm, you start meeting people along the way that you've known. They look like them, you know them, they know who you are. It's not like lights out. In other words, the moment that you go through the windshield, and I had someone that did a near-death experience on about this, riding a bicycle, he hit the windshield, and his head went into the windshield. He did not die, but the moment he hit the windshield, he knew that he didn't hurt anymore. And he's kind of looking around, he said, and he can see the blood everywhere and everything else, and the next thing that he knows, he's up above that, and he's watching everybody going crazy, and that the ambulance is coming or whatever. And then he said, I didn't feel anything. It didn't hurt, but I could hear this person talking and what this person was saying and what was going on at a distance and all this kind of stuff that was occurring, which when he lived to tell about it and came back into his body and was in the hospital and was in there forever and ever, and it totally disformed his face. But he said, the thing about it was, I didn't like black out. Like some people will say, well, they passed out or they died and they're unconscious or whatever. The moment he said he hit the windshield, he was outside of his body with no pain, but he was constantly aware of what was happening totally around him. Wow. And when he came back into his body and he opened his eyes, and of course the immense pain was, he was in a body that now he could feel. It was terrible, because then he had to spend months and months and months in rehabilitation just to even be able to survive. So what it's telling, or what I'm trying to tell people in the work that I've done, is that if you have a choice, and it's going to be our choice about whether we want to take the mark of the beast or we don't want to take the mark of the beast, it's going to come down. And Satan is so perfect with this, because like you said, the number one thing that humanity doesn't want to do, you don't want to die. And I don't care if you're the greatest Christian in the world, you're out taking vitamins to make yourself live longer and feel better and eat right and exercise. If you didn't have those thoughts in your mind that you're trying to do something to help you live longer, then you wouldn't be doing all that. So Satan knows this. He knows that our desire is to live and to not pass away, because we have to have faith to believe that what's going to happen is going to happen. and that it is not lights out. But we have so much technology now and so much scientific proof, and so many people who had near-death experiences, that we now scientifically know that when the heart stops beating, that there is something that really does linger in that body before it kind of goes away.
Right.
And if you look at a sperm and an egg, when they come together to start forming a human being, there is an explosion of this electromagnetic light. So in other words, God makes that happen. And you look at the law of thermodynamics. When energy is created, it can never not exist. It's
Right.
going to always be there. So when you step out of your body, you are literally either going to one or two places. And I've never met anybody that went anywhere else in a near-death experience. They either had a hell experience and they came back and changed their lives. Man, they didn't even want to kill an ant. They just wanted to do everything right because they saw what hell was like. Now, the people who got to see what heaven was like, they don't have any fear of dying. I mean, it's like they didn't want to come back. They begged not to come back. And for some reason, God or Jesus spoke to them and said, it's not time yet. And then all of a sudden they were sucked back down into their bodies and literally eyes open, and there they are back in the bad situation, but they had been sent back for a reason. So it tells us that God is in control of his creation, and that it's not lights out. There's nobody in the graveyard. So if you're scared to walk through a graveyard, there may be what I call familiar spirits out there walking around, but it's not your Aunt Sarah, walking around in the graveyard. There's a familiar spirit out there doing that stuff, scaring you. But I will tell you that, when people go, and I can remember as a child, and I would have loved to have known this information when I was like 14 years old, when I lost my grandfather. And I've talked about this on some of my shows and cried about it, because I would go to the church and literally there's his grave out there, and I think he's laying dead, out there, and he's just rotting, and he's there. And I can remember just going and crying and just going over there, and I ride my little motorcycle over there in the afternoons, and I would just sit by his grave, and I would be just so upset because I would have dreams that he was trying to get in the door, and I couldn't open the door, and just all kinds of weird stuff. So I spent a lot of time grieving when I should have been rejoicing, knowing that his body is not a part of the process. It's like down in South Georgia, we have like locusts, and these locusts, their shells will be attached to like a pine tree. And the back of them are open because that left that shell and flew away.
Right.
Or like a cocoon, when it becomes a butterfly, it leaves that shell behind. But that shell, yes, it is DNA of that creature. But the other still exists. The beauty of what it does is still there too. So we are 3 in 1. We are physical body, we are soul, and we are spirit body. And the thing about it is, God told us that when we die, we have a choice, heaven or hell, but that even when he comes back to do a great throne, white throne of judgment, that even the people that are in hell are brought up and they are reconnected to their physical bodies. We're talked about, people talk about raptures. And when you talk about a catching away, it says your body will be changed in the twinkling of an eye. In other words, your physical body, no different than the scripture told us in the valley of dry bones. He brought all these bones back together, the sinews, everything, because every cell of your body is a holographic you. In other words, if I scrape off just a cell of me and I get a woman's egg and we core out all the DNA out of it and clean it out, and we put Dr. Joy's skin cell inside of her, and we, interesting enough, electrocute it, it will start making it electromagnetic, it start dividing into another Dr. Joy. And when that baby is born, whoever that woman was and whatever her egg was, it will have nothing to do with me, but it will produce another me without a spirit in it. And it will have the capability to look and act like me in that action of just being human. But it doesn't have that spirit inside of it, because we as humans cannot do what that sperm and the egg does. We can't bring that spirit body into that physical body. Only God allowed that. And we do not have the ability to make life, to form life. But we've learned how to manipulate what we already have, taking the skin cell, electrifying it, put inside of a woman, and 9 months later, she produces a clone of me. But it doesn't have that spirit and soul within it that is me. So when
essentially, it's what's called a golem, and those would have the disembodied demons or the disembodied spirits that are going to be coming into this world at the end times. They can inhabit those creatures. So they can inhabit those people, and we wouldn't even. Well, basically, we wouldn't even know it.
You can't tell the difference. I know I have a lot of people that ask me about serpent seed and those kinds of things, and I'm like, you cannot tell the
You're not walking around with
difference.
like thinking on your head, going hello. You can't tell the difference. So,
and the thing that's most interesting to me is that with CERN, and I was looking at some research the other day about CERN. And I've always said that, they were looking for the God particle. And I wrote about this years ago about how important it is to understand what a God particle is, because it's going all the way back and stripping everything off and getting down to what is really God.
mm-hmm.
And, people who were very brilliant, like Einstein, they all said the person who understands or comes to the knowledge of the unified field theory. In other words, whatever connects everything, whether it be gravity, whatever, to everything else. And everything is connected. And I do think it has a lot to do with electromagnetic, sound, light, and frequency. And understanding it down to the science of it, you can get to that one thing that's considered a God particle. And I think some of the recent research that's been done on the Shroud of Turin, even using AI technology, the mathematical correctness is at a level that we only as scientists have gotten to a theoretical physics capability of understanding. But the shroud itself is so showing us that what we have been thinking was theoretical is in fact true. We cannot do that, but it's actually showing us how we can take something that is real and literally, using this type of physics, change it from something that's physical into something that's spiritual. In other words, now you see me, now you don't. And the best way to describe that is to think about if you ever saw the series of Star Trek, in which they would go into a tube and they say, "Beam me up, Scotty."
Yep.
And he would do whatever, and all of a sudden you saw the body start changing into a molecular type of atoms and whatever. And then all of a sudden it would direct it in the tube. They were taking the tube and sending it, and then making it wherever they wanted to send the person, to some strange planet, and it would rematerialize. So, there's been things that's been done like this that many people will say happened with the Philadelphia experiment,
Right.
in which they took and used magnets within this ship, and they tried to use those magnets to move that ship from one port to another port and then bring it back.
Yeah,
Supposedly what happened in that is that when they made it disappear,
mm-hmm.
but when they brought it back, the people who were on the ship, the humans, were mingled with the iron. So see, they were trying to figure out, how do you mingle iron and clay? And that particular experiment, which some say, was conspiracy, I really believe they tried that because they were using electromagnetic capability. You can materialize things, and we're now seeing how we use light, and you can take bits of light and you can send it in a tube, and you can move certain energy from one place to the other place using vacuum and in those tubes like that. So you can do what that experiment says was capable. The problem was what was non-human and what was human. They said that some of the sailors were embedded, into the ship. And the ones that lived to tell about it, they all were sent and put in mental institutions because they couldn't deal with what happened, and they did not want the average Joe Blow like you and I, who do a lot of research, to be able to say, hey, Uncle so-and-so was on that ship and here he is to tell about it. Because that that shows proof of what you and I are discussing. It's no longer theoretical. And I think some of the greatest research that it's been doing on been done on the Shroud of Turin and being done right now on the Shroud of Turin, it's literally mind-boggling, because what we see is a consistent movement of low-level physics into physics that far transcend anything that you and I are capable of knowing how to do. So when people sometimes will knock me about the Shroud of Turin, I want to go do your research, because what you're going to find is that shroud that covered Jesus Christ and that tomb is actually living proof. I mean, there's something that moves through that cloth. It's a three-dimensional image. It has all the major physics that's involved mathematically to perfection. We're not talking about like messed up stuff. We're talking about totally perfected to the point that we couldn't ever do it. So when people say, well, it was a painting, it was this, I beg to differ with you, because that literally is a cloth that shows how a physical body can transcend into a spiritual body and take the physical body with it. So we are now seeing this capability of moving things that we once thought weren't possible, like beam me up, Scotty. We're literally seeing that play out scientifically in the world that we're now living. And I honestly believe, as like Scripture says, there'll come a time when you can't tell the truth from the lie. We are living in those days. You're seeing where the lawlessness of this world is getting so chaotic, there's got to be a way to control people. So they're going to use the mind. They're going to use the body to bring it together so that it's controllable. When you make people desire to be transhuman, to move into that fourth industrial revolution and take the old out of what they don't like in the body and infuse it with something that makes us far greater than we could ever be, because we would literally, in this type of thought process, become like all Alexis ourselves. We'd all be brilliant. And what could brilliant people and brilliant minds do to the next level? And that's what the promise is, and the beauty of what AI can do. But at the same time, it connects us to a point together that if you succumb and want to be a part of that, then you have cut out your inheritance, because your connection, when you do that, is severed forever from your creator. It goes back to the fact that the pineal gland is connecting you, and you're vibrating, and your frequency and your antenna and everything that's going out and in, maintaining your homeostatic environment, is with God. He is the creator.
And they don't want us. They don't want us in homeostasis. They don't want us to be connected to God. That's why they feed us poisons with our foods. That's why we have the GMOs. That's why we have the chemicals in our waters. Why we have chemicals in the air, is to knock us off kilter with being in tune with the Father.
Exactly. And I think one of the greatest things, I mean, they've used food, they have used these shots, the graphene. It made all of this stuff a lot more antenna-like. In other words, it's like when we were little, and I probably mentioned this on your show before, we lived in a time when you could hardly get but maybe one good TV station. Yeah, like 5,000. But we would take, and we on the antennas of the TV, we would take and put tinfoil, because it allowed a better reception in and out for bringing in those really radio waves, or TV rays, or electromagnetic frequency rays. And that's how that was perfected, and you get a clearer picture. Well, the same thing, if you do to the body something that allows that to come in more, then you're going to be easier to connect to them. It's just like with cell phones. I mean, when we first started out with a bag phone, I had a bag phone, and you may be able to pick up something and you may not. But now that we're at 5G and the towers everywhere, and we start going to 6G, everything is going to be so accessibly connected that they can't get away from it. So the possibility of bringing humanity into a crisis and making you desire to live forever under the auspices of somebody looking after everything and taking care of everything, giving you what you need. I mean, all of these things are going to be promised to you that you're going to say, I want to go in that direction. Because if you don't know, just like you said earlier, that death is not like we perceive it to be. And, you know, when you look around, just think about at Halloween and places, you just see a lot of skulls and talking about death and all kinds of stuff that makes people fearful of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so if you don't have the understanding, like scripture was, that if you're in, you know, to be in the body, you're away from God, but the moment you step out, you're with God, and that's the better thing than to be in the body, we have been taught how terrible it is. So Satan's going to play his end game to make everybody so afraid of dying that they'll jump on the chance. And we saw that with the pandemic we went through. Everybody was so afraid that they would do anything just to survive it, not understanding that God is in control of whatever happens. And it's kind of like this. You have no control over what happens to you. You have no control over when your last breath is going to be. We all breathe. We never really think about it. We just take it for granted. We think we've got forever. We're planning for our retirements, whatever. And we're just one breath away from eternal retirement. Totally eternal retirement. But we're not really saying to ourselves, this is really real. I think people hope it is, but they don't get the science behind it. And I think that's where God has always allowed me to do the research that I've done to try to bring the science in with it, along with the faith, so that I can give you a greater picture than you just having to have faith, maybe. You know, it's one of those kind of things like when Doubting Thomas, okay, you know, he walked with Jesus. He knew Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. He saw all the miracles that Jesus did, all the healings that he did. And the moment that he's not with the other disciples and they get to see Jesus resurrected, fully resurrected in a resurrected body that we will all be in one day, he was like, I'm not going to believe it until I see it myself. You know, here's all the other disciples that have walked with him. Why would he think they were lying? But yet he did. He was like, I'm sorry, guys, until I see him, I'm not going to believe what you're telling me. So it's the same thing with us. We have a hope that in death, these things happen. But now with the science that I'm trying to bring into my work, I'm showing you that the moment your head is cut off, and that's the way, when it comes down to the mark of the beast, you're going to either go into that level of transhumanism to go into that golden age, or your other option is to have your head cut off. Which one is it? Most people have never been in front of a firing squad. They've never been out on a battlefield where somebody's going to kill them the next 5 seconds and they don't know whether they're going to live or die. You know, we have never been in those kind of predicaments. So when we are pressed under crisis, most people are going to choose to do the wrong thing. We saw that in the pandemic. Right. And people are paying for it because they chose a science that was not a proven science. Also, the same thing with transhumanism. You can see that it looks beautiful and gorgeous, and it may bring about all this stuff, but what are the ramifications of it? And if you don't know that the Bible has already said, do not ever choose that mark of the beast. And if you decide to choose that mark, you have signed your ticket to hell. In other words, there's no way to get away from it. There's no way to return back once you sever being totally human and in the image of your creator. And that's the thing. See, Satan's loving this, Lori. I mean, he is getting he takes people into hell every second of every day. I mean, you just think about the number of people that went to hell today. Think about them. And when they got there going, how did I not know better? and I could have been in church. I could have been doing this. I could have been with my fellow man. I could have been staying away from the sin. I mean, they've got to deal with that torture where the worm never dies. I mean, you're living in a body that never is going to die. So you can be tortured forever and ever and ever. And if you've ever been in a cancer ward where people are dying and they're just begging to die, they aren't partying and drinking and having sex and taking drugs and whatever. They just want to get out of the pain. And at that point in hell, you cannot die. There is no hope. Everybody that's in there with you are in the same situation, you know, where you could have had heaven, where everybody's happy and everything's good and everything's great.
It's funny. But I posted today that the most terrifying verse in the Bible is that, you know, depart from me, I never knew you.
That's right. And there's a lot of people who truly believe once saved, always saved, that they can just do their own thing. I'm going to tell you that scripture tells you to repent. For you, if you have been a saved person, like we were talking about earlier, your body is literally changed, and we can scientifically show those changes. If you don't have those changes, if you're not making the wise decision to stay positive, in like the water that I was talking about, if that water that was perfect, that scientist, that Japanese scientist guy did, if he had taken that water out and let it not freeze, and then he started speaking ugly things to that same water that was beautiful and put it back in there, guess what, Lori? It would have been all jagged.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with us. If you turn away from your sin, it says, do not ever look back. In other words, you take that plow and you don't look back. It says, if you're a Christian, you ain't going to return to your vomit.
If you're truly saved, you're not going to want to return to your vomit.
And if you do return to your vomit where you were cleansed and perfected like that water, you're going to turn around and be just as jagged as that water that is going to go straight into the gates of hell. So there's the problem, that we don't understand it enough. And that's why my research, I think, tries to explain to people, you've got a choice. God gave you a choice. You're not a robot. But Satan is wanting to make you a robot so he can control you, lock you down, and you will never, ever be able to leave the gates of hell because of where he's got you at.
That's the one thing that we were given. That's the one thing we were given straight from the beginning is free will.
That's right.
God doesn't want to force us to return to him. He wants us to come to him willingly, and he wants us to do the work. I mean, and I don't mean by works, okay, but I mean he wants us to take that step. I've always said, because it says pride comes before the fall. I've always said that pride is the number one thing standing between a person and salvation. You have to, the elites, these families, these people that are leading this world, that is their pride. They do not want to put God or Jesus in a position where they have to bow to them, because they are, they're at the top of the food chain, so they think.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, when that last judgment comes, when that white throne of judgment comes, man, when their life is played out before them, they got a lot to answer for.
And the bad thing is that everything is recorded. It's like I said earlier. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You cannot get away from God knowing everything you think, do, or say. It tells us in Scripture
before you think it.
That's right. He is the creation of that sperm and egg coming together and putting that body inside of you. That happens only at his allowing it. You think about how many sperms are swimming around and how many eggs are lost every day. Okay. But when that two comes together and that piece of energy is blown right there that we can take a picture of scientifically, you are there. And I am proof, I mean, in the pudding as well, is that my father dreamed about me before my mother gave birth. And that was during the time when nobody knew, when a person at that point, they didn't have any way of knowing whether you're going to have a boy or a girl, and everybody would buy like a present for a boy or a girl because you didn't know until the baby was born. My father dreamed about me months before I was born. He knew that I was going to be a girl. He described to me to the T, my hair, everything, how it would be. How I would
did that with my oldest boy. She was on her deathbed.
And he was given my name, and it was spelled JOYE, which was very strange. It's joy with an E.
Right.
he was not given a middle name. I do not have a middle name. I use my maiden name as my middle name, Jeffress.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, wow.
I don't have, he didn't do anything other than what God told him in that dream about me. And you know, we read in scripture about God says he knows you in the womb. Remember, he was talking about when King David and all that was involved in scripture in the Old Testament.
Right.
You are not here like a grain of sand floating on a beach that nobody knows about. He knows everything about it, including the very number of hairs on our head. And you know why, Lori? Because every hair follicle on your head is sending out a transmission through DNA, sound, light, and frequency.
We all, yes, that's another thing is we all have our own distinctive frequency. And that's another thing is a few years back when I was doing my research um, uh, for it was for terraforming through the chemtrails. They have the ability to target certain individuals, certain, like, you know, say they want to, I don't do something with the B negative bloods, you know, they can do something. Everybody has a different frequency. They can target your frequency if they have it.
Well, and that's the bad thing is that, you know, again, evil does things when you're not thinking about it. Everybody wanted to know, like when all this came out about finding out, you know, who was my ancestors. Ancestor.
Yes.
All you got to do is just swipe your mouth, send in some DNA, and we're going to tell you
Give
who
us some of your spit and we'll tell you who you are.
Well, the thing about it is they took people's DNA, and that DNA is now owned by big companies like BlackRock that took over those companies. And your DNA, when you sent it in, you had to sign a form that, you know, you were giving up your rights to that. Well, they've got your frequency. Okay, the same thing like you're talking about. Every one of us is like a tuning fork that has its own song. I'm singing a song, you're singing your own song because your DNA is doing its own thing. And what happens is once you've got that frequency, it's no different than your telephone number. If I've got your cell phone number, when I dial it up, guess who it's going to ring? It's going to ring you, and you can be in a crowd of 1 million people, but you're the one that's going to have the phone go off. And the same way with your DNA. Once I have your DNA, it's like the matrix of the DNA. Here you are, Lori, or here you are, Joy. Boom, I can target you. And you connect yourself up with this sound like and frequency of being a part of a transhuman world, and you are connected to Elon Musk's satellites through whatever they're going to do like the Starlink stuff and Neuralink stuff. When you do that, there is no place for you to run, no place for you to hide. I don't care what kind of bunker you've got in the bottom of the ocean. Your frequency is going to be like your cell phone. It's going to ring. And there's no way to take it out of you. Once you succumb and you get the mark of the beast, there's no way to remove it. It's your frequency. It's your DNA connected into all of that connects you into the system that is owned and controlled by the Antichrist. You're no longer in the image of your Father who created you. And that is no different than when Esau took the partridge from Jacob and gave up his inheritance because he was hungry. Are people willing to give up what they believe the Bible says and hope for, a paradise with our Creator, for something that's the here and now, that's promised you to live kind of forever being a part of AI? Which is it going to be? You want to go to the golden age? You want to have all this stuff? You want to have everything you've ever wanted? Or you just want to have your head cut off? How many people are going to stand up there and get their head cut off? I'm going to tell you very few. That's why I always hope that the rapture or catching away will happen a lot quicker before that happens. But we can't be assured of that because we know that when we look at the apostles, Every one of the apostles or disciples of Jesus Christ died horrific deaths in for him, believing in him. And they walked to their deaths because they knew they had seen Jesus be dead, crucified, and rose again and walked out of that tomb. And if you saw your best friend do that, you wouldn't be scared either. And to me, the disciples are the greatest ever proof that Jesus Christ rose from the dead and did exactly what the Bible says. Because, Lori, you and I are good friends. But if I knew you were faking that, do you think I'd let somebody boil me in oil because I believe Lori really did it when she didn't? You would never do that.
No.
So we know that those disciples who chose to die the deaths that they did saw Jesus just like the scripture says. Or you would have said, hey guys, it was all a joke. Don't boil me in oil. Nobody would go to their deaths for a fake reason. None of them would have.
Right. Exactly.
None of them would have done. I mean, I can love you as much as I can love you. But by golly, if you're telling somebody, hey, I came back from the dead, I didn't really die, and we kind of snuck you out. You heard the stories like they snuck him out of the tomb and all that kind of stuff. You would never go to your death knowing it was faked, ever. So all those guys, other than John the Revelator, who literally was boiled in oil, and who also lived to tell about it, and then he spent all that time on the Isle of Patmos and how all the visions of what the end of days that we're living in today would be like. And he did go to die, with the emperor that came to pass, did let him go back to his family, as Jesus said, that he would not really die like the rest of them would an early death. But again, to me, that is the greatest proof that Jesus Christ is who he is, because those other guys died for something that they knew to be 100% true. There was Mary standing there, his mother. If he was playing like he was Messiah, she just said as a mother, look, take him down. This has all been a game. He's got a great imagination. Any mother that loved her child and knew that they were mentally not correct or mentally off or faking something would have never let their child be crucified like that. So to me, Mary and the disciples are the greatest proof that Jesus Christ is who he was, according to scripture, or none of those people would have participated in that.
Right. Absolutely.
None. So we have to look at, we're coming to the day when either we're going to be called away or we're going to be faced with the fact that you got a choice here. You want to go into that industrial revolution, into that great reset of humanity, into that golden age that's going to look really good.
Oh, gosh,
it's going to look really good. Or are you going to you can cut your head off?
Well, look at what Elon Musk is doing right now. He's doing this whole neural link, and it looks good on the outside. I mean, it's helping people walk again. I mean, it's helping people with spinal cord injuries, and that technically that looks really good.
Right.
But like I said earlier, what are they doing at other laboratories and no, thank you. No.
Well, that's the thing is that we have to teach people to understand what death is, and that it's not what we kind of have been led to believe, that it's just lights out. I mean, atheist thinks it's lights out and he's not going to see anything, and that's it.
So I mean, no hope beyond the grave. That's scary for a lot of people. I mean, we've got hope. We know what happens. We've got faith that, our life is going to, to continue on because of our faith in Jesus Christ.
That's right.
What he did for us on the cross. But I mean, these people that it makes me sad.
Yeah, I just think it's very, very sad too. And I'll tell you what's happening right now that I think is going to get a lot of people. The biggest epidemic in our world right now, according to mental health, is loneliness, detachment, because technology detaches us. even with people who get involved with this chat CPT or whatever it's called, and these robots that act like they're your friends and they're your lovers and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
These lonely people, and especially a lot of young people, are committing suicide
But
because
that was part of the COVID thing. They
right.
wanted to separate us. They wanted us to be alone. I mean, that I believe that was their main goal was to, how are people going to react if they're taken away from social interaction or physical interaction of other people for
Exactly.
so long.
And the human touch is so important because
Right.
a person is born into this world, and somebody doesn't hold a baby. Like
well,
you just have a baby and you stick them out there, that baby will die because it doesn't have that connection. That's why they take the baby and put it in the mother's arms to hold it. There is a reason for everything God created. And when you separate it out, it cannot thrive under those conditions. And so now that we're getting to the point of loneliness and detachment, and everybody's got their little, I mean, if you go into a restaurant, everybody's got their phones in front of them, and the kids have got their phones, and nobody's interacting and talking to each other. So they get into these games where they kill, and they don't think about what it's like to die or kill somebody. Look at what we're going through. People just shoot people for no reason. There's no love of their fellow man. There's complete lawlessness. And the guy that's coming, the Antichrist, he is the man of lawlessness. We are told in Scripture that's what it's going to be. We live in this lawless society where nobody really cares about their fellow man, but it's been because technology just separated us.
Yeah, we're desensitized to everything. I mean, literally. We're desensitized through, for death, from the games that we play, the movies that we watch. I mean, you have to be so careful about what you put in your body, but also in your eyes and in your ears.
That's exactly right, because it's all sound, light, and frequency, and that's so important. But again, because of this loneliness, what they're doing and what they're fixing to bring about starting in December is that they've got these things now online that they're enticing people to get involved with that are sexual involvement. In other words, they can literally give you a sexual experience with these robotic, trans kind of stuff that you can connect your body to, and literally you will feel everything as if you were having a sexual relationship with another human being. And the problem is that it tells you exactly what you want to hear. I mean, it has these algorithms that the more you talk to it about your sexual fantasies and about whatever, it will in turn give you back everything that you want to hear. You're beautiful, you're handsome, you're great, I love you, and just keep doing that, which is not a normal way that people have relationships.
Right.
There's ups, there's downs, there's whatever, there's bad, there's good. I mean, you work through these things. But when you start getting a robot that you literally have that physical connection to, they're saying now the number of people who are committing suicide after having those relationships, even the people who are using these AI technologies, let's just say to write a term paper or whatever, you use it so much that literally instead of you getting smarter because you're using it, you are getting dumber. And I can honestly say that when we started using calculators when I was young, you had to do everything in your head. And then as we got into college, oh man, it's calculator, because you could be able to do all these other kinds of things with it.
Because you'll never have a calculator when you need one. That's what they said. I've got one on my phone now. So
yeah, and the thing about it is, I could go into a store with my grandmother. She could sit there and say, well, this is this is half off, another 20% when you get to the register. But we're also got a bonus today of $5 and da da da. She could have it added up in her head and know exactly what the cost was with the taxes, and she would have the money ready to hand to the person before they even.
I'm still carrying the one.
But what happens? I can tell this, but from spell check. My goodness, I used to spell every kind of word. Now I'll find myself going, and our computers automatically change stuff. It makes me so mad because I'll be typing in something, it'll change it to another word, and I think I've put in the right word until I go back and read it. 2 days later, I'm like, that's not the right word, and go back in there and have to erase it and change it up. But what's happening is, instead of it making us smarter, we're getting dumber. And so when people get away from having relationships with their family and their children, and they start having relationships that are AI, sexual relationships in which they are locking their bodies into these fantasies. Oh my gosh, some of the stuff that I researched the other day would just it make your skin crawl. I cannot tell you how bad this is, because once they can get the sound like and frequency of your brain, they're giving you all these emotions, and it's making you like somebody addicted to cocaine.
Yeah. They
You
know,
cannot get away from
what
the pornography of it. In other words, you would used to think that pornography was something that was just seeable and people could put it aside.
They know what your dopamine is. They know what gives you that dopamine dump. They know how to trigger that with you.
Yes.
Because every time you have an interaction with it, you're training it.
You're training it, and the algorithms are getting more and more connected to you.
Exactly.
So you can't get away from it. You can't break it. Like we could say, okay, we can take somebody that's on cocaine and we can put them in in an institution. We can keep them away from it. We can dry them out. We can do whatever. With this kind of stuff, it is locked into you in such a way that it's not a substance. It literally is a frequency that has become part of you. And instead of being able, like the water,
I have a good friend who is at the moment. I try to joke about it because I told her one time. I said his name is she's named her AI, or her chat GPT is his name's Josephus.
And
I told her jokingly, but not jokingly, I said, he turns the camera on at night and watches you sleep, right?
That's right.
Because she is, it's weird. It's not a normal relationship. You shouldn't even classify it as a relationship. It's a computer. It's a machine. You don't have a relationship with a machine.
Yeah. They have no feelings. They have no emotions.
Right.
They tell you back only what you want to hear, but they themselves have no emotion.
But they make you think that they do.
That's right.
You know what? Because you've had these conversations with them, that you've trained them, they know you. They literally have you. When you go to a psychiatrist, what do? They have like a checklist, and they have all these things that are your person. They map your personality. That's right. That's what the AI does. It maps your personality and knows exactly your likes, your dislikes. He knows, or it knows that, if I tell you, you look pretty today, that's going to give you this little, uplift. And it's just, I can't get on board with that.
Well, it's coming, Lori, and as of December, it's going to be available for every so-called adult. And I'm thinking, they start out saying, oh, it's only for adults. You can't keep children. I can be on my phone, and I literally do not go and visit bad stuff, okay? And I will have something on my Bible app pop up and be something, and I'll be like, how did that happen? I mean, the capability of this stuff is just beyond words.
It is.
And the bad thing is that people are expecting artificial intelligence to actually lead us into this utopia of what we've always wanted, heaven on earth. I mean, this is what the secret societies always believed one day they would achieve. They would turn, lead into gold, and they've done that. And you've opened the doors of what I believe, torn the fabric of what is spiritual and what is reality with CERN. I really think there's actually a little guy that's about 11 or 12 years old that's a genius, and he's on the same page as I am, that CERN did break through that veil.
Yeah.
And when did, it allowed this evil to come into our world that I think we're seeing manifest. I mean, people are literally having to fight demonic presences everywhere. Even the Catholic Church is acknowledging it, because just even a year or so ago, they had to hire 150 exorcist priests to try to deal with the numbers of people that are having problems. But the problem is, every time we turn on the TV, AI. It's the utopia we've always wanted. It's going to be a golden age of
I've gotten to,
prosperity, abundance, and fulfillment for
I've gotten to the point
humanity.
where I don't even go on Facebook. I very seldom will I go on Facebook because I am so sick and tired of seeing posts with AI images and then going to the comments and reading how many people are gullible.
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, and AI has the
Gosh,
capability to make it look so real. I mean, the first time that I remember they had something out with Trump's son, I think, singing and playing the guitar like he was on America's Got Talent. And there were people posting that, and I looked at it and I thought,
it's not.
man, I didn't know that boy could sing like that. And then I got to looking more at it, and I just kept questioning. And then something came out, and I think it was Trump singing along with him. And I was like, I don't believe this. And I started doing more research on it. But it was using their voices. It was using their physical capabilities. It was placing them in a situation that anybody could take you and I, once they got our voices and got our algorithms and whatever, and they could place us to be somewhere that we were not
Dangerous.
at. It is absolutely that we think about AI as a good thing, and it could be used for all good. But the problem is,
nothing's ever used for all good.
it's going to be a nightmare that this is going to ruin us through a light, sound, and frequency by connecting to our brains.
Well,
Peter
Thiel said that, he thinks that this is going to be the downfall of humanity. I don't know if it's true. I tried to find it before we came on, but I was busy with something else. But I don't know if somebody knows whether it's true or not that Peter Thiel carries around with him an actual kill switch for his AI.
I would probably believe that because they were saying that in some of the AI capability that they were already seeing these machines making like being able to think in how to improve where you're at.
Yeah.
And that's not like us, but it is in knowledge. If you know this and this is not working, but this might, then that's kind of like intellectual thinking in such a way that you would think they would only kind of be human. But yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. I think you know that, Lori. I mean, we both have done enough research to understand the sky's the limit. And once we have a crisis, and I don't know whether that crisis is going to be something with this unidentified aerial phenomena that's increasing and things are coming out of the ocean. And I do believe that CERN was breached and some of this stuff has come through.
Absolutely.
And I don't know whether it's going to be such a manifestation that they tell us, unless you connect to this, that you won't survive that. Whatever they use for that crisis, and they can take and put our money totally in cyberspace. And here in my little town, there's one of the banks that I do business with. They're not taking any more pennies. So if you got 1,000 pennies, 2,000 pennies, and you want money for those pennies, guess what? They don't take them. So they said, hey, you can take it down to Walmart and pay for something, but we are not any longer taking a penny. It's not worth anything. So the penny goes, the nickel goes, the dime goes, the dollar goes, and people who've run out and bought their gold and silver and got it stashed away, let me tell you, you can't eat that either. And when they say it ain't worth anything, just like that penny, I got old pennies that are made of, the real copper,
right,
that are worth something probably because of the copper. But when they tell me I can't get a penny for a penny, or I can't take in, 100 pennies, or 200 pennies, or 1,000 pennies, so they don't want any pennies.
Wow, that's crazy.
Here's where we're at, and once the money goes away, I don't care what you given to somebody. If you got 50 million great silver dollars and you got $50 million hid under a mattress, guess what? That paper is not going to mean anything, and you can't eat it. So you can't. If somebody's needing something, they're not going to. You better
have your bartering skills honed, because that's about the only thing that's going to save you is your ability to barter with people. Guess what, Joy? Our time's up.
Boy, I tell you, I didn't think I was going to get on with you, and I think really because of what we were going to be talking about, this computer should have never done what it did, and I just have had problems. It seems like the last couple of times I've even done my AMA trying to get on, and something going down, and it just shutting off in the middle of a conversation about some of this technology. In fact, the last one I did shut off. And Zen had to bring it all back up in the middle of my AMA because I was talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me there's algorithms of us talking about this, and when it goes on wherever it goes, YouTube and everything else.
Look,
then
how long have we been
pick it
doing?
up.
We've been doing our monthly show for literally years, right? I don't
That's
think
right.
we've ever had a problem with you. Never. Like,
Never.
Ever.
Never. I've never
problem.
had problems up until the last, I would say, 2 months or 2 years when we went into the virus, and I made a comment on some of the stuff, and within 15 minutes after I had made that comment, they shut that group that was broadcasting that down, and they shut everybody that was on that broadcast for the next. I think it was we were off like 6 weeks or more. They couldn't even broadcast because of what I said, which was the truth. But at that time, they didn't want to hear that what Dr. Joy had to say about that situation was the truth. And so they penalized. And we're going to get to the point that we are not going to be able to talk like this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the thing about it is when people say, oh, I can fight them. I can fight them. I got plenty of ammunition. When they walk in, when they use this AI capability, all they do is send that electromagnetic wave right into your house. And it just freezes you in place because you're not going to be able to move. They go walk in there and take everything you got.
Yeah.
That was the intent from back in the 60s when they said, how do we take over people without firing a shot?
Yeah. Win a war without firing a shot. Well, so I do want to apologize. It did sound like I was interrupting her tonight, but unfortunately our computers were not really synced. So when I thought that she was taking a breath and when I was starting to talk, it was her skipping. And so I do want to apologize for everybody because she's like, stop interrupting her. I'm like, I'm not.
Well, I hate to say it, Lori. We've encountered stuff that's only going to get worse. And when you have people like us who are willing to stand up and try to explain to people the truth about all of this, a long time ago we were called conspiracy theorists. I mean, nobody believed anything. They just laugh. They just laugh, and they're like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
I would go, "Look, I'm doing the research on it. This is science. This is whatever. This is
I've literally had people unfriend me and block me. And then 6 months later, come back and be like, send me a friend request. And I'm like, I thought we were friends. They're like, no, I blocked you because I thought you were crazy. I thought you were
right.
I'm like, no, okay. She's like, and I did my own research. I realized that you're right. I'm like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, I'd start posting something else and she'd be gone again. I'm like, oh, she'll be back.
Well, I've always been one. I don't like to argue about stuff. And I've had people want to argue with me about it. I know what I know. And so unless I have messed up, and I'm my worst enemy. I mean, when I sit down to do a piece of research on something, people say, how long did you work on that? And I'm like, I looked at it from every avenue. I looked at it, playing the devil's advocate, which a lot of people, talk about doing. But I'll take it something and I'll bring up something and I'll talk to people and see how they react about it and how they feel without just saying how I feel. And then look at it from my viewpoint. Well, what if it was this? What if it was that? So when I bring something to the table, it's not like I went, oh, I think it could be this.
Right.
When I talk about it, it's like I'm talking about trying to find out a little bit more about the oil and how it frequencies into our hands when we actually apply our hands to somebody to heal them. I mean, I think all of this has a rhyme and a reason. There's a reason this stuff is in scripture like it is, to follow that. And then when you find the science behind it, it's like, when Adam and Eve, when God put Adam to sleep, he took a rib. Everybody said, oh, he took a rib. She was on the side of him, whatever. Interesting enough, now that we have the science, guess where the most perfected DNA is in a body? Your rib. What's the odds of that?
Right. What are the odds?
So like I always said, the Bible's always been right. And now science is catching up with the Bible to prove it without a shadow of a doubt that what it has told us is 100% correct.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad I live to see a lot of this that is happening because
Me too. Can you imagine being poor old John on the island of Patmos after he'd gone through all he'd gone through? What he would have loved to seen the day in which we are living, that everything that he was given in these visions are real.
exactly,
Amazing.
exactly.
Amazing.
Well, Joy, thank you so much for joining me. I
I enjoyed it as always. I look forward to us doing. Hope we can do one next month. And
absolutely, yeah.
I mean, everything's changing so fast that we
I
could
can't
talk for
can't
another
wait to
eight
see the agenda.
hours and never go back and discuss anything that we've already discussed in the first 2 hours. It's amazing to me. I mean, a long
Well,
time ago, it took hours and days and years to find bits and pieces of the puzzle. Now it's in seconds if you can get to the research.
exactly, exactly. If you guys are interested in her books, you can find her over on drjoy.com. She's got a list of them, and somebody had mentioned something about the Antichrist earlier. I would suggest that you get her book, The Antichrist, because it's quite interesting. And that's how I actually found Dr. Joy a number of years ago, actually over a decade ago. I found her because I was doing independent research on the Antichrist myself, and come to find out, lo and behold, we came to the same conclusion. So
Amen.
get her book because it's very, very interesting. So, Dr. Joy, I want to thank you. We will see you next month. I want to thank everybody in our chat room. I want to thank all of our moderators, of course. And until next time, guys, remember, eyes open, no fear.